Ellen, forever 70, will join me in a moment of silence for past President Tom Schicken. All right, thank you very much, guys. John Runyon has a pop-up about our Alhambra fundraiser. And family and some family.
Hey, everybody. Phil Boss, I've been trying to stay in touch with him, and I know I made a few announcements, but I just want to read something that I was talking to Lucy, his daughter. Phil's family would welcome Rotarians and friends that would like to spend a few hours, 2 to 4 hours visiting Phil at home, taking him to Rotary meetings or just for a drive, even if it's just one time or a few times a month. The family has someone with Phil 24 hours a day, but he's in good spirits. He cares for himself. He's talkative. His memory, long-term is good, but especially short-term is not, very spotty. Family described his condition as moderate dementia. Phil has several Navy friends that come by to give Nancy, Lucy, and Phil Bravo, former member of this club, his son-in-law, and other family members to take a break. So he's in good care, but the family and Phil would enjoy and welcome any West Jacksonville Rotarian that would like to visit with him for a few minutes. Patty has Lucy's number, but you can just reach out to Lucy or Nancy, his wife.
Would he want to come to the club?
Yes, she thinks he would. He'd be comfortable to come. That's why she said you can pick him up, bring him. He stays for a little while, or take him back. Like I said, Phil's in health, physically healthy, but we had a good visit, and I think folks that have a moment, just give a call and see. But yes, bring him. On the table, and also there's 2 posters in the back, just kind of keeping the Alhambra fundraiser in front of you. Today, I just wanted to call out sponsorships. Let me back up. We've sold 147 of the 154 tickets. So they did give us a chance to buy 12 more tickets. So if you're interested, we're getting down to the wire where we're going to sell them all, or we'll get a few more. I'm hoping next year, talking to Eric, and Tim, maybe next year we might rent the whole theater out. So we want to make this a really good event and get Riverside involved. But on your table are the current sponsors that we have, and we have 3 different levels. Parrot Head sponsors, $750. Main event sponsors, $500. Spotlight sponsors, $250. You can see the folks that are currently contributing. We appreciate that. Say thank you to them. You can also make a gift, $100 or $50, and then you'd be a friend of the event. We've had Mark and Donna Holsey made a gift. Doug Milne made a gift card gift to the restaurant Cross Creek. So these are sort of things that we'll be handing out in a raffle later on to make it a fun event. But if you're interested and you can help with sponsorships, I think it'll get us over the top this year. We can raise another $5,000 that way. But if any questions, just holler at me later. Oh, when is it?
April 24th.
It is, but let me get, so on one of those posters, you can take a picture. There's a lot of information about how we're going to handle seating. If you're a sponsor, you're going to have first choice at seating. There's going to be more tickets in a raffle. We're going to have a fun event. So we're going to have a themed luncheon on March the 27th. It's going to be really festive in here, give away some stuff, last chance for sponsorships. During the Youth Awards, we're going to which is on 4/17, we're going to recognize sponsors, give away some stuff to the counselors. But the Alhambra show is 4/24 on a Wednesday night. So more information up there, give me a holler. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for all the hard work on the fundraiser, and thank you for the pop-up about Phil. While we're on the topic of fundraising, Eric Sherman has a pop-up.
Thanks, President Dan. Good afternoon, everybody. Greetings from Riverside. Good to be back here. Real quick, why did the computer tech go outside? He was afraid of the bugs. They almost didn't let me come here because of that. Well, so it's time for the 10th annual Riverside Beer Craft Festival. On the table, we have some announcements, posters, There's a QR code on the poster that'll lead you right to the site if you want to buy tickets. There are still opportunities to buy VIP tickets that get you in early. This year, we're doing something a little different. The beer distributors want to introduce some of their alcohol mixers that'll only be available during that first hour. Otherwise, we have access to some of the special beer brews also during that hour. We're being joined by the Jacksonville Jaguar cheerleaders and the drum line, and possibly a special visit by Jackson DeVille, who doesn't like to announce that. So we don't know for sure, but we told that he does like to make that surprise visit. The sponsor packets, there's still time to get those in. We'll plaster your sponsorship throughout the entire event. And if you get it in early enough, we'll even market it during the pre-events on our websites and marketing sites. Volunteer opportunities are available. There's some sign-up sheets there. And unlike the years past, when I volunteered as part of this club, we are going to utilize Rotarians in very special spots and important spots. If you want to pour beer, that's going to be great, but we have some other areas that we like to use our Rotarians specifically. So we appreciate any support you can, and I look forward to working with Tim next year so we can mutually support each other's fundraising activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. We appreciate being included. It's always such an outstanding event. I've been in the past. It was a great fundraiser, and I know I personally look forward to it. Ron Roberts has a pop-up about Riley.
Those are the new members in the club that don't know, Riley is the Rotary Youth Leadership Academy, and it's for rising sophomores and juniors. And we have two sponsors, or two spots that we sponsored. So if any of you have children, grandchildren, friends that you think might be interested in that, let me know. The deadline for submitting their application is the end of this month. So we need to get moving on it if we can, but hopefully we'll have some takers on it. It's been a great program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Joe Springer has a pop-up.
Completely unrelated to the club. Just want to let you know I'm a Space Knight. For what it's worth, grew up in Titusville, saw all the launches. This Friday at 8:30 in the morning, the station is coming back from the ISS. It's going to do a path right over Florida, and they're going to land out off of Daytona. At 8:30 in the morning, if it goes as planned, it is not a nuclear war. It is just the hell of a sonic boom. You will know it. You won't know what it is, but you should be able to see the fireball coming, the boom, and then it leaving. 8:30 in the morning, look that way. Fun stuff.
All right, Joe, thank you for the heads up. Rob Frazier has this week's Family of Rotary.
For the game. Let me put my close-up version on. Okay. First, this week's birthdays. Barry Allred, February the 1st. Actually, that was last week, of course. Brian Crabtree, February the 4th. And Jeff Raymond, February 4th. And finally, John McCorvey on the 10th. I really don't have any other Family of Rotary news to report aside from what President Dean reported on Tom Chipinella stuff. I was planning on announcing it myself. I would like to supplement what President Dean said is in regard to a few little details I dug up from one of our ancient Rotary Facebooks that had Tom in it. He actually joined the club back in 1972. So he had been a Rotarian for a bit over 50 years. And was not quite a founding member because I think the club was founded in the late 1960s. And he was president in the 77-78 Rotary League. That's it for news on me. Any news from the floor? Family of Rotary? Any pop-ups? Yes, that's great.
If I may say, our Pepper Pump Schreiber
His wife is from the other room, her second chemotherapy treatment, that's why he's not here today, so please keep any of her in prayers.
Anything else? That concludes my report. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Rob. Sergeant at Arms William Milne will now introduce our guests and visiting Rotarians.
Thank you, President Dane. When I shared the list, we did not have any active guests other than our wonderful friends from UF Health and Proton Therapy. Welcome to have you. And he's already wonderfully made his presence known, but I want to give a very special welcome back to fellow Rotarian Eric Sherman. Welcome back. As just a quick note on a fun fact, as we're in an election year and we all have our ways that we vote, I do want to make a note that several past US presidents were also Rotarians, including John Fitzgerald Kennedy, both of the Bushes, and also former President Donald Trump actually was Rotary president of the Club of New York City. So always good to know that we have members all across the line. That concludes my report. Thank you.
All right, thank you, William. It's now a pleasure to bring up Tim Johnson, who's going to introduce today's program.
Thank you, President Dane. Good afternoon, Rotarians. It's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker. Christina Mershell is the Business Development Manager at UF Health Proton Therapy Institute. She promotes wellness, builds referral relationships, and increases public interactions between the community and the UF Health Proton Therapy Institute. Her previous experience includes work at the Ronald McDonald House in Jacksonville and at Proton Therapy Centers in Florida and in Texas. The UF Health Proton Therapy Institute is the first and leading proton therapy facility in the Southwest. And for the last 17 years, the expert physicians there have treated more than 11,000 patients and over 20 cancer types, helping patients around the world achieve excellent success and quality of life. Please join me in a warm West Jax Rotary for Christina Mershell.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it. And I've already heard from a few people that went on a tour of the Proton Center probably about 17 and a half years ago when we were just opening up. So that's really exciting to hear. And I appreciate the opportunity to come and share a little bit more about what we do, where we're going, what that means for Jacksonville. So thank you for the welcome. And I hear that, and I can see there's a bunch of people joining us online. So hello, welcome. Thank you for joining in, even if you couldn't make it out here today.
Give me a second.
Today, I'm sorry.
So go ahead. I'm going to catch up to you.
Okay, you're good. I am joined by Craig Daniels from the University of Florida Neurosurgery Department, as well as a cancer survivor, Arthur Bendoff, who's one of our Proton ambassadors, who you will hear from shortly. So I'm very grateful for them joining me today. All right, so who are we? What are we doing?
We're waiting.
We're waiting. That's okay. So proton therapy, it's a targeted form of radiation. It is would be used in place of traditional radiation for some patients. And proton therapy has been around. It's been used in cancer centers for over, I think we're at about 30 years. The first proton center opened up in Loma Linda, California in the late 90s. And
There you are.
sorry.
Just keep going. Don't worry about me. I got you.
I got you. Protons were discovered back in the 40s. I think it was 46 with the atomic bomb. They're like, okay, protons can be used in this way. And then after the atomic bomb, they said, okay, what can we do with this? What good can come from this? And now for over 30 years, we have been treating patients with cancer with proton therapy. Thank you.
Point at me.
Okay.
No, I just mean the pointer. This is what you're aiming at.
Got it. Thank you so much. Okay, so this is just kind of the history, started in 46. The first center opened in, not late 90s, in 91 in California. And then we opened in 2006 here in Jacksonville, thanks to the generosity and the people really making a push for this nationally and throughout the state to bring proton therapy to Florida. So we're very excited about that. So that's not showing up very well. So in 2006, when we opened, there were only 5 proton centers that offered proton therapy across the United States. But today, as of today, there are 44 operating proton centers in the United States. There's 6 in Florida, and there's about 7 under construction across the United States. But this center here in Jacksonville that we have was the first proton center in the Southeast United States to bring proton therapy, which is really exciting. We have about 125 staff, 10 doctors, a bunch of case managers, and like you said, we've been treated over 11,000 patients in our 17 years, which is wonderful. What does this mean for Jacksonville? Having a proton center here has and will continue to bring people to Jacksonville. We know Jacksonville is amazing, but a lot of people are like, oh, where's Jacksonville? We know Orlando, we know Tampa, we know Miami, but Jacksonville may not be the first choice for some people, but having this here has really brought a lot of people to Florida. So we've treated patients from all 50 states, and I think we've hit 34 plus, it might be at 35 countries across the world. People have come to Jacksonville to receive this treatment. And we are very grateful that the city of Jacksonville is very good at welcoming any visitors that come in, especially if they're coming here for cancer treatment. So we treat adult patients, pediatric patients, and a lot of rare cancers, which is why a lot of people do come to Jacksonville. So what is proton therapy? So, when you get cancer, there's a lot of different treatment options. You usually hear about chemo and radiation. Proton therapy is just one subset of radiation. It's one possibility. So when you're diagnosed with cancer, you could need all of these different treatments, or you could just need one, or some different combination. And it just depends on the type of cancer that you have, the stage that it was diagnosed at, is it anywhere else in your body? There's a lot of things that are taken into consideration. So what is the difference between this traditional radiation that we can find in every city and proton radiation? So on the left-hand side is an example of traditional radiation that uses X-rays. So they're like light waves, and they're going to go all the way through the body. So they're going to go in, hit some healthy cells, hit the cancer cells, and continue out and hit healthy cells on the way out. So there's a lot of damage to healthy cells and whenever you hit a healthy cell, that's what causes the side effects that you hear with cancer treatments. And radiation works by breaking down the DNA of those cells. And when we do that, that causes side effects. Healthy cells are able to kind of regroup and heal themselves, and then it's not so bad. The cancer cells, we're going to break them down, and that's good. So we're killing off the cancer cells. But also when we're messing with the DNA of cells, we have the potential to cause another cancer down the road. So radiation oncologists were like, okay, we're killing these cancers, but then 10, 15 years later, this person's presenting with a new disease, new cancer, which we may have caused by radiation. So when they found out how protons work, so physicists found that protons, when they go into the body, and wherever they stop, they spike off like their highest dose of radiation. So we're like, okay, if we can spike off higher doses where we want to, and then nothing goes out the other side. It's called the Bragg peak. So it goes into the body at a lower dose of radiation. Wherever it stops, it spikes off the highest dose, and nothing is going out the other side. So in that way, we're sparing a lot of healthy tissue from getting damaged by radiation. And that is allowing us to cure more cancers, give a higher dose where we actually need it, and less healthy cells are getting radiated, less chance that someone is going to come back to us in 10 or 15 years with another cancer that we could have caused with this radiation. So that is really the promise of proton therapy, and it's amazing. So how do we do that? So we have, those of you who've been on a tour might have seen some of this equipment. We have a huge cyclotron, and it's this huge 220,000 ton magnet that accelerates protons to about 2/3 the speed of light, gets them going. They go down that's a cyclotron here at the far end of the building. They go down the beam line. There's all these electromagnets along the beam line that help push and propel that proton beam into each of the treatment rooms. And our three original treatment rooms are these big gantries. You can see there's a patient on the table in comparison to the size of it. These are 3 stories tall. And they're 3 stories tall because they allow the proton beam, we want it to be able to go 360 degrees around the patient so that we can go in at whatever angle makes the most sense. So protons, they still do deliver some radiation to healthy cells before we stop at the tumor, wherever it is in the body. But if we can go in at whatever angle that makes the most sense to go into an area that's going to have the least amount of side effects and damage to the healthy cells, we want to be able to do that. So that's what these 3-story pieces of equipment allow us to do. So the patient just lays on the table, the machine moves around it, stops at the right spot, and it can deliver the radiation more directly to where it needs to go. So this is what one of the original treatment room looks like. You can see the patient lays right in the middle, right there. And then this part that's sticking out here, that's the beam, end of the beam line for this room. This whole thing, someone called it yesterday on a tour, a hamster wheel. It's kind of a hamster wheel, just rotates all around the patient so that we can go in at whatever angle we need to. And this is actually the newest technology that was put in December 2019. And this is a smaller, more compact system. It only goes up about half a story above the patient and half a story below, not a whole full 2-3-story worth of equipment. And it only goes 220 degrees around the patient. It doesn't do a full 360. That's allowed us to take this equipment, make it a little bit more smaller and compact. So a lot of new proton centers that are opening are adding a 1 treatment room with this smaller compact equipment, making it more economically feasible to bring proton therapy to more people across the country. It's really exciting. This room also can deliver the beam a little bit faster. It usually only takes about a minute to deliver each beam to the patient. So they're in there like 15-20 minutes getting set up. The beam goes in 1 minute. That's it. This one can cut down sometimes this if I make it 45 seconds. Not a ton, but hey, for a patient who's laying on a table, every second counts and they can get on, get up, and go on with their day. And that's our goal. This one also has the smallest beam size. So the proton beam is like the tip of a sharp pencil. This one has like the sharpest pencil you could possibly get. That's how small it is. It's usually about 1 millimeter or less. So we use a method called pencil beam scanning, which, you know, when you get an MRI, you just can see all the slices of your body, all the parts. So we basically take that MRI, that slice, and we go to the farthest slice of the cancerous area, paint on the radiation at that depth, come 1 millimeter closer, paint on the radiation at that depth, because a tumor is going to be like my fist. It's jagged. It's not a perfect sphere or square or anything like that. So at every depth of the tumor and area you want to treat, we want to make sure the radiation is really tightly conformed around the edges of that area, so we're getting less radiation to any healthy tissue. They said we treat over 20 different types of cancers and subsets of those. Basically, anything that can be treated with traditional radiation can be treated with proton therapy. And for each case, we're going to figure out when someone comes in, what is the best treatment option for you? So we're part of University of Florida, and we're very grateful that we have both traditional radiation options and proton radiation options right in the same building. So when someone comes in, the physician's going to look at your specific case. No 2 people with lung cancer are going to have the same exact situation and figure out what is the best radiation for you. And for some people, it's actually a combination of traditional radiation and proton radiation to get the right dose where we need it and as little dose to where we don't want it to go. So these are some of the main cancers that we can treat. And what does it look like in the body? So these are the treatment plans that dosimetrists put together, which are pretty amazing to me. So red is going to be the highest dose, and the blue is going to be a lower dose. This is an example of someone with cancer on the left breast. On the left-hand side is traditional radiation. And you can see there's a good high dose on the breast where we want to treat the patient. In the middle, we have circled the heart, and then the black areas on the side are the lung. So in this case, we're treating the breast, but then we're getting about 1/3 of the heart is getting some radiation, and about 1/3 of this lung is getting radiation. That's going to potentially cause this person to have heart disease, maybe not right away, 5 or 10 years, or have issues breathing, and just doing their daily activities, walking up and down the stairs because we have radiated part of their lung, and that can cause potential damage. But with the proton radiation, we're able to avoid almost all the heart. I think there's one little slice that gets it, and a lot less of that lung. However, this is definitely one of those cases where if the cancer is on the right side, on the right breast, because there's less of the heart directly behind the right breast, we usually use traditional radiation because we haven't found a benefit of using proton therapy. Everyone's anatomy is a little bit different, depending exactly how much into the lymph nodes we need to treat. But this is really one of those cases where proton's definitely not always a better option. And I'll show you a few others. There's an example of prostate cancer, and you can just see how much left of the body it has color on it in that treatment plan. For someone with lymphoma, which is throughout almost the whole upper body, where is it? The proton therapy is on the far right. In the proton therapy, we can avoid radiating the breast and potentially causing breast cancer down the road. We can avoid the reproductive organs for someone young. A lot of young people get lymphoma. We can avoid the heart and the stomach as well. So avoiding all of those organs and tissues is going to have a great impact on that person's quality of life. Example of head and neck cancer. This one's kind of interesting. So the middle plan is with traditional radiation. Then we have a proton radiation plan. And if you took the middle one minus the proton plan, this is how much extra radiation someone would get if we ended up treating them with this traditional radiation plan. And that just speaks volumes to me about how much extra radiation someone could possibly get. We have also treated more pediatric patients than any other proton in the center in the entire world, and there's over 100 across the world. Dr. Danny Indelicato, who's there, he is one of the leaders in pediatric radiation oncology in general, not even just protons, and people go to him for advice. So a lot of those people around the world that we've treated have been pediatric families, and we do an amazing job at trying to give them the quality of life that they deserve. So this is one of our patients right here. That was 5 years ago, and this was them just this fall.
Wow.
So she came back. She's good. They came back for a follow-up, and they also fit in a lot of time across Jacksonville and Florida, doing a lot of sightseeing while they were here, but they were excited to come back. So it would be cool if they wanted to come back. Oh, and they were from the UK. Sorry, they traveled from the UK. So this is an example. A lot of pediatric patients will get brain tumors. This one was an eye tumor. So in this case, you can see how much less of the brain gets any radiation, and children's cells are much more susceptible to the damage from radiation. So we want to be even more careful about how much radiation gets to their body. What's next? We're doing a ton of research. Part of University of Florida is doing research. All of our physicians, they treat patients, but also spend about half of their time doing research, taking the statistics from all those questionnaires that you fill out at the doctor's office. 98% of our patients have allowed us to use whatever data they say. How am I feeling today? What is this hurting? Is that hurting? It may seem insignificant to you, but that data is huge because that can tell us, is someone actually responding the way we would expect them to? Not how the doctor sees them responding. The doctor can say, this is my feedback, this is what I see. But what is the patient actually saying? What are the side effects that they're feeling? Is it related, whether it's related to the radiation or not? We can assess that, and then we can make adjustments on that treatment plan. Say, we didn't expect to see as many of people saying they had these things hurting or these issues. So what can we change in our treatment plan to make it better for the next generation of patients coming through? And it's been huge. So a joint study between us and St. Jude's. We used to treat all the patients from St. Jude's, but then they saw how actually beneficial it was, and they built their own center, which is wonderful. But they did a study that found that proton therapy is the gold standard for a type of pediatric brain tumors. And pretty much across the pediatric radiation world, proton therapy is the way to go for kids, but they're always continuing to do research to see what can be done better. We have an amazing support service team for adults and for the kids. So right here, this is Jasmine, our child life specialist. So she helps the young kids who are coming through, help to understand what in the world is going on when they have to come to all these appointments. How do they need to stay still on the table so we can accurately deliver the treatment? She helps, we might have a 10-year-old who, because they have a brain tumor, presents as like a 5-year-old developmentally because of how it's affected their life. So she'll talk to them and help them understand, do you need to be Elsa, who's the ice queen, who stays super still on the table for 10 minutes so that we can deliver this treatment? While she'll connect with them in a way that makes sense for them and helps them get through the treatment. So we're very lucky to have that. Really, all this technology is great. The research is great, but if you don't have people who know how to use that, then we're not going to have the greatest outcomes. And we're lucky to have physicians that have over 17 years of experience to help patients have better outcomes, better quality of life, and just a better experience in general. So, we have 5 different treatment rooms. One treats ocular melanomas and the other 3 treat all the different other types of cancers. And we're continuously putting out research ourselves across the proton world, the American Cancer Society. And a lot of it is really just showing that patients are having fewer side effects, better outcomes, less chance of the cancer reoccurring 5 or more years down the road, and less unplanned hospitalizations. Side effects, things always happen. Some things we know about, but if we can reduce the chance of that, someone going to the hospital unexpectedly, then that is really helpful for their outcome. We have continually doing clinical trials. One really interesting one that Dr. Dagan is doing is for head and neck cancers. And he's trying to see, they can actually do a blood test that can test how the body is responding to the radiation about halfway through treatment. And if it's responding well, then they can cut their treatment down by 2 weeks. So instead of 6 weeks, they might just get 4 weeks of treatment. Amazing. If you don't have to come every single day for 6 weeks, that'd be great. If it isn't responding as well, then we're going to continue with the 6 weeks. But it's really showing how we're able to tailor treatments to each individual person and make it better. We have seen great outcomes with people who have cancer in both breasts and being able to spare as much tissue as possible. Our research, we're waiting on the final publication of our 10-year prostate cancer study, which seems we've been open for 7 years and we're still waiting on the research, but it takes a really long time to analyze all of that data, and that's coming out soon. But so far, we've been able to deliver higher doses of radiation to the prostate and still have lower side effects than we would expect with traditional radiation. And then hypofractionation is basically being able to say, like with prostate cancer, normally you would treat over about 8.5 weeks straight. It's a really long time to come every day to a doctor's appointment. Now, the 5.5 week course of treatment is having the same outcomes with still low side effects, even though every day we have to give a little bit higher dose to those people than we did when we could spread it out over 8.5 weeks. All right, then I want to hand it over. We do have a survivorship program, but I want to hand it over to one of our survivors. Arthur Bednoff is a prostate cancer survivor, and he has volunteered to be part of our Proton Ambassador program just to share his experience. Our Proton Ambassadors are not screened. Maybe Arthur was a little screened today, but they're always available to get on the phone with someone who's been newly diagnosed. If they had not the greatest experience, they can still be on the list. If they have the best experience in the world, they can be on the list. Arthur, I think it was a pretty good experience, but he was here to share a little bit about his experience.
Do we need any more of this?
Nope.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Arthur Bednoff, and thanks for having me. I'm an Air Force veteran. I love the service above self. In 2021, I became a prostate survivor, thanks to you. 23 treatments, and they took care of me. But what's amazing about cancer, in 2020, I had no symptoms. I thought I was going to the doctor, do my annual physical, and get the normal, you got high cholesterol. That's what I expected. But he said your PSA is high. I didn't even know what PSA of prostate was. Fast forward 6 months, I was diagnosed with cancer. No symptoms. I was reading all this stuff, talking here about all the symptoms. I had no symptoms. I felt great. So I started researching, looking around, going all over the world with the Mayo. And I found out in my back door, people traveling the world to get this amazing proton therapy. I'm standing here in front of you today as a survivor with absolutely no symptoms. And I told them again, I tell Christina all the time, thank you for giving me my life back. Yeah, and maybe AJ again. I thought that was over. And I've dedicated my life to share other people, to tell them how great they are. So all this fancy stuff, I didn't understand it. I have a doctorate degree. I didn't understand it. But I understood when I was reading and finding out about all these treatments from radical prostatectomy. I don't want anything radical happening with it. That one out. To find out that takes care of the people, that I have no side effects. Only side effects I ever experienced was a little burning during the actual 43 treatment. And the doctor told me to take some of the leave. And they took care of me. I'm 100% back there. Thanks again. So if you think that Jacksonville is an amazing city, I already thought that, but when I found out that I can go in my back door and get treated, and we have some of the best medical care in the world, I'm blessed. Like I say, I still feel like a young man. I recently turned 60, but I'm 2.5 years. My doctor told me when I first went to UF, our goal is to get your PSA below 1. I'm proud to say, thank you, UF. In October, my PSA was 0.21. Good for you. He said you're doing amazing. So, you know anybody or anything? I'm their biggest cheerleader. I love them. They gave me back my life. My wife even talks about her birthday. And I'm just thankful. And I wanted to share. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for sharing. Not everybody has no side effects, but I'm glad that you did. We can take a few questions before we finish up if anybody has any.
Let the sergeant at arms get his mic too.
Thanks for coming. It's very interesting. I was on that original tour that they did some number of years ago with the 3 big machines, and it was fascinating. It was like Star Wars stuff at that time. Now in Jackson, you said there are like 7 or 8 other centers around Florida. Are there any other proton therapy treatments in Jacksonville besides your machines?
Yes, we are the only city in the entire country that has 2 proton centers. The other one is at Ackerman Cancer Center down on San Jose, right down in Mandarin. So we are very lucky. Also, Mayo Clinic has proton therapy at their 2 other locations across the US, and they're finally bringing it to Jacksonville. So we are going to be the only city that has 3 proton centers within the next 5 years. So if you need cancer treatment, I think you're in the right place. Hopefully you don't, but yes.
Do you know what the rate of success is between prostatectomy and proton therapy?
Great question. There's a lot of different research out there. If you have low risk prostate cancer, the outcomes are really close, usually probably about 97, 98%, with no reoccurrence at 5 years afterwards. For intermediate risk, I don't remember the exact intermediate risk with proton therapy. Our outcomes are about 95%. No cancer after 5 years. With prostatectomy, it's in the lower 90s or high 80s. And then with high risk, there's even more of a difference. It's probably about 50% with prostatectomy versus with proton therapy, it's about 75%. So that is based on some research. There's always ongoing research. Every case is very different, so it depends.
Thank you so much for being here. Fascinating. I was there many years ago as well for a tour. Unbelievable. So you mentioned that you're the #1 for children's proton therapy treatment. What do you equate that incredible statement towards?
Dr. Damian Delicato, a lot of different things. It's people who are dedicated, physicians who have dedicated their life to just focusing on pediatric cancer. So having that specialty in radiation, a subspecialty in proton radiation, and then a specialty really focusing just on pediatric cancers. The research that University of Florida is able to do in conjunction with our partnerships with the Children's Hospital, so with Wolfson's and Nemours. Most of our patients are coming through there because they start at Wolfson's and Nemours, get diagnosed, maybe do surgery, have part of their treatment, and then we're part of that team that is treating those patients. And then a lot of it is also just the experience of just trying to take care of the patient and also their whole family when they're here for treatment. We have support groups, we have activities for them. Santa Joe finally came back this past December, and we are able to give them an opportunity to go meet with Santa. Just normalizing their life and their experience. So it's a big combination of everybody chipping in. Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. This is truly fascinating. A couple of questions for you. First, if this is so successful with some cancers, why can't we use it for all cancers? Second, are there any downsides to the proton therapy? And third, are you finding that insurance is covering these treatments in general?
Good questions. Okay, first question, I'm sorry. All cancers. So we're constantly evaluating which cancers can be used and constantly doing research, even if they're not on our list of the 20 cancers that we treat. We're trying to see, could this come in? Could this replace chemotherapy or surgery? Depending on the outcomes, can we just change up the whole process for each different kind of cancer? It's just not always going to be the same because all the different tissues in our body respond differently to radiation. So we don't treat a ton of gynecological cancers. But we've had recently some really good outcomes with some cervical cancers, but those are a very case-by-case basis. Sometimes if cancer has spread and metastasized throughout the body, stage 4, it may not be the best option if there's so many areas of the body that need to be treated. Proton therapy is so pinpointed that it just may not be the best option. So luckily, when we have all different types of radiation in our center, the doctors they get paid the same no matter what someone's treated with, it doesn't matter. Some of the downsides to proton therapy is the really big equipment, which is impressive and we need it to be able to do what we need to do. But the economics of trying to build a proton center is really, it's a lot. I think when we started 17 years ago, it was $125 million. And I've heard centers, if they're going to put something in this big, nowadays it's about $250 million. It's worth it in the long run, but it's hard for any healthcare system to say, can we do this? And insurance companies, it's on a case-by-case basis, depends on their type of cancer. Right now, Medicare and TRICARE cover proton therapy for almost any diagnosis. So they see the benefits. The private companies, it just depends on the research that they've seen and how they've been. So we keep trying to just put out more research, even though we say this research really show that this is really beneficial, or look at these 2 treatment plans, look how much less radiation this body's going to get. So for most of them will cover like left-sided breast cancer because they've seen the research. Right-sided breast cancer, very rarely will they cover it unless we make that appeal for it. Luckily, we have an amazing billing team and physicians who will get on the phone with the insurance companies and make the case if needed. So about 1/3 of the cases that are denied by insurance companies, we're usually able to get those overturned and help those patients out. So we're constantly fighting for these patients to have it if it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, then we'll let you know. We are part of the National Association of Proton Therapy, which is all 44 proton centers in the US right now. There's different subcommittees, but like our billing subcommittee gets on the phone, all the proton centers get on the phone once a week and say, okay, what's working for sharing, getting the news out to insurance companies? We had this person with this cancer, which we normally couldn't get approved by insurance companies, but this worked. This is what worked for us. We'll share it with each other to work together to try and improve access to care. Yeah. Did I get all those questions? Okay. Yes, sir.
What about housing for patients, and particularly pediatric patients in there? I would assume they'd have at least one adult with them.
Yeah, there's probably about 50% of our patients are coming from out of town for this treatment here. So we have, luckily for the pediatric families, we have the Ronald McDonald House, which is an amazing partner. And I got to work there for several years and just see the patients on the other side when they went home to the Ronald McDonald House and have a place to stay. And usually they can have at least 4 total family members staying in the Ronald McDonald House. If it's a lot more, they may not be eligible. We also have the American Cancer Society's Hope Lodge over on the Mayo campus that offers free lodging for anyone going through any kind of medical treatment in the area. As long as they have an opening, they'll get them in. And there's a lot of other discounted lodging available, a lot through the American Cancer Society. And then we also work with anyone in the area who's willing to do short-term leasing to patients who they know are only going to be here 6 to 8 weeks. They'll reach out to us. We probably have like 100 different lodging options on our website that patients can look into. A lot of them have had luck with the Airbnb and things like that lately, or just word of mouth. So we have a social worker and just a team on site with patient support services trying to do everything we can to make it easier if they do have to travel and stay here. But everyone that does stay here in Jacksonville, they really enjoy their time. So thank you. Yes.
So where does it go? If you zap something with the laser, it smokes. if you do what you're doing, does it get carried away in the bloodstream? Does it just disappear? Where does the stuff go?
It's a really good question, and I feel like I've asked the physicists this. We have 8 PhD physicists. From what I understand, it just kind of, once it stops, it blasts off, and it just kind of dissipates there. It does its damage, and it's done.
Just gets
Just, yeah, it's like you don't walk out of the treatment room radioactive like you would if we had like implanted radioactive seeds or something like that. Yeah,
it's just magic.
it's just magic. I'm gonna say that. I'm really peddling a whole lot more towards that, but I apologize. I am not a doctor or a physicist or clinician, so it just doesn't really stick around. It will sort of keep working on the cells over time, but it's not something that's just like constantly being active in the body.
Interesting.
Yeah, good question. One more question.
I was on the original tour many years ago. And the thing I recall most about that was the type of where you were able to point whatever you were trying to cure.
Yes.
I mean, they had all these codes and stuff, very methodical, very mechanical, and was a real good while you were successful.
Thank you. I'm so glad you're able to do that tour. We're always open to offering tours. If anyone ever wants to come, you can reach out to me. I'll do a personal tour. It is really amazing how protons work and pinpointed. And the physicist explained it to me. It's kind of like if you're putting the golf ball and you know you want it to go 2 feet and get in the hole right there, you're going to hit it this hard. But if you need it to go over a tuft of grass, you got to hit it a little harder. So it just depends on the speed that we send that proton in. What the physicists help us figure out, where is that actually going to stop? So we send it at the right speed. And that's what makes it pinpoint.
I'm interested because I'm beginning to visualize what this happens. The technicians that are doing it, what is their background? What is their training? What are they called?
So the people who are actually delivering the treatments every day, they're radiation therapists. A lot of them have either a 2 or 4 year degree, specifically in radiation therapy. A lot of them will start out as an X-ray tech and then go on to MRI and CT techs, so they're understanding imaging. When they start with our center, they always go through at least 6 months to a year worth of training underneath a more seasoned radiation therapist, getting that checklist, checking off those competencies so that we know that they really understand the setup required for this person, the equipment, how it all interacts, the computer systems and all of that. So they go through a ton of training to be able to be part of that final 2-person radiation therapy team delivering that treatment to that person. Most of what they do is getting that person set up in the same exact position every day. If we can tell our proton exactly where to stop, but if the person's not in the same position as they were how we created the treatment plan, it won't be accurate. So 3/4 of the time that the person's in the treatment room is actually doing that setup and ensuring that accuracy. One of the ways they do it is they get the patient all set up, they have markers on them, and they line it up with lasers in the room, and then they'll actually do a CT or an X-ray to check internally. Are we lined up internally within less than 1 millimeter of accuracy of that treatment plan? And if we're not, let's call the doctor, send them the images. What do they say? What do we need to do to make this as accurate as possible? They're pretty amazing, but it's a whole multidisciplinary team. Physicians, physicists, dosimetrists, radiation therapists, and a lot of other people behind the scenes.
Wait, one more?
Christina, thank you for coming today. I've got a question. I went on that original tour, and at the time they were using a plexiglass lens, or filter, if you will. And I think they were promising that they had advancements expected in that area. Do they now do a scan of the tumor to create a 3-dimensional profile where they can then emit the protons in the correct way without having a physical lens like that? Maybe you could explain that, how that's changed.
Absolutely, yes. So what you're referring to is the lucite compensator paired with a brass piece. Those pieces originally were the original ways that we used to focus that proton beam and make that 3D image of whatever the shape of that cancer and surrounding areas was. We do still use that sometimes, but the next generation is that pencil beam scanning that I talked about, where basically in the computer system, we create that 3D image of the area that needs to be treated. And we can tell those beams it's like a 3D printer, but we're not actually physically printing anything. We are imprinting that proton in just the shape that we want it to. And that has actually allowed us to do treatments faster, have even more precision, more tightly knit around the edges of the area we need to treat. And I'm sure that they will come up with something else, but pretty much, that's, yeah, thank you. Good memory from 17 years ago.
Yeah.
Thank you all for the opportunity.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you, everybody from the team that came out to speak to us. That was tremendous. You know, it's any cancer diagnosis is of course devastating, but to think of the good work that you're doing for everyone, especially kids. I mean, it's hard to think of an important work. So thank you for coming and sharing this. Next week, our speaker will be Shamari Gloucester from the Children's Film Society, and Joe Everly is going to lead us in the 4-way test.
Our 4-way test. First,
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
All right, thank you, everybody. Let's have a great Wednesday and go make the world a better place.